German Ambassador to Israel, Steffen Seibert, thank you very much for being us.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And to the lady with the sexy voice, thank you very much.
I think there are many people here specifically and in Israel, that want to thank Germany and you personally for your uncompromising support of Israel. So I would like to start with this.
Well, thank you very much. I will gladly accept this on behalf of my country. I think it is true that Germany stands loyally by Israel in this terrible time. We have always, for decades, we have been friends of Israel. This, I think, is a historical moment to prove that. The atrocities of 7/10 really leave no alternative. I think coming from where we come from, this singular German-Israeli relationship steeped in history and steeped in the worst tragedy of history, leaves no alternative but to stand by Israel, because very clearly the security of the State of Israel, the very existence of the State of Israel was threatened or is threatened by what happened on October 7th. I would argue that for any other state in the world that doesn't have our history, they should come to the same conclusion, because Israel was attacked viciously, atrociously, and has every right to defend its citizens against this attack. So whether you look at it from the background of our terrible history, or you look at it from the background of any other state, you should come to the conclusion that Israel has the right to defend itself against Hamas. And that's where we are.
Germany, as you said, Mr. Ambassador, has stood by Israel's actions in Gaza since the beginning of the war. But in the past few weeks, we heard the Chancellor Schulz saying that he is strongly opposed of IDF entering Rafah. Why?
Well, first of all, it's one thing to say that we stand with Israel in the fight against Hamas. But that doesn't mean that we do not see what the consequence of that fight is. I happen to think it is a very just cause to fight Hamas. But of course, the number of 29,000 dead people in Gaza, many of them civilians unattached to Hamas and not terrorists themselves, this is not something that anyone cannot see. And I know that I met in the background, in the speaker's room, I met Daniel Hagari. And I know many people in the Israeli government, they too are worried about this. This is a concern for them as well, and it must be. You cannot just see one side. So, going back to the very specific situation of Rafah, Rafah now has a population of some 1.2 million people. Before the war, it was 250,000. So it's full of people that came from other parts of Gaza to escape the war there. Now they're in Rafah. You cannot conduct a major military offensive in Rafah in what is probably the densest populated area. I know that it's Hamas that is to be blamed for this war, and I don't doubt that for a second. But you cannot let the people of Rafah pay for that. You cannot let them pay for the fact that Hamas has this vicious strategy of embedding itself in civilian surroundings. So what we keep telling our Israeli friends and what the Americans and other allies also are telling Israel is make a plan how you can get the population of Rafah out of harm's way before you think of any major military maneuver. Now, this apparently is what's being done. I don't know the plan yet. I read that the IDF has come up with a plan. Let's see.
So you're not saying Israel should not enter to Rafah at all, but you have to do this after you take out the population from there?
We look at the situation as it is now. 1,200,000 people in Rafah. they need to be safe. They came to Rafah to be safe. Their life is hellish anyway. Let's not assume that this is some holiday resort. This is a terrible life under huge strain and stress, and with very little to eat, to drink, no medication whatsoever. It's a terrible life under hellish war conditions. These people need to be safe before any idea of a military operation can be carried out. This, I believe, is also what the Prime Minister wants, what the IDF wants, and now we will see what those plans are.
You mentioned the fact that...
I also think that, if I may add that, it is in the very best interest of Israel to conduct this war in a way that doesn't kill the wrong people, that makes it possible for Israel's international friends to keep standing by Israel. This is very important. And I think that over the course of the past months, the Israeli government, the Israeli military leadership have completely understood this.
I can totally agree with you. And you mentioned the fact that Hamas surrounds itself with civilians in order to survive. The meaning of this demand not to go into Rafah in many ways, in the Israel perspective, might be finishing the war with no winning, with leaving Hamas on the borders, keeping on creating a huge risks to Israel civilians.
Ofer, I'm totally with you. I can understand that Israel cannot live with a terroristic threat just a few kilometers away from Israeli kibbutzim after the 7th of October. You cannot expect the people to live in Otef Aza or to go back to the kibbutzim to rebuild them when that threat is still there. I'm completely with you. And I think this is how many of your international partners see this. The question is how to conduct the war, how to show that Israel is not like the enemy it fights, how to show that Israel fights Hamas and not Palestinian civilians. And I'm very glad that this is all the time being repeated also by the Israeli leadership, and it has to be shown.
I want to ask you about the hostage crisis. There are German citizens there in Gaza now. Why are you not more involved, Germany, in the negotiation with the pressure on Qatar as you were before?
We are as involved as we can be. We speak on every level, working level, president, chancellor, foreign minister, to anyone who plays any role in influencing Hamas. We do not have, Hamas for us is a terrorist organization. We don't speak to them directly. We speak to Qatar, we speak to Egypt, we speak to everybody else who has a role in this. We try to do whatever we can behind the scenes to get these hostages out. And not just, of course, not just the German citizens, who, by the way, are also all of them Israeli citizens. They're double citizens.
Of course.
But everyone, each and every one of these 100, whatever the real number now is.
34.
They've been there for 145 days. It's unbearable to even imagine what they've been going through. I spend a lot of time speaking to their families. For them, the 7th of October has never stopped. They're still in that day. The torture hasn't stopped. So we want them to get out, and we support everyone who can play a positive role in that. And right now, I'm full of hope that something will come out of these talks. I don't know how realistic these hopes are, but I think this is what's needed. This should be the number one priority. Get Iskar Shav, get them out. That's...
Iskar Shav, he said. By the way, his Hebrew is not bad at all. I mean,
yeah,
we're working
limited
on our English, but...
limited to these snippets. But anyway, I think this should be the priority because it's like an unwritten contract, I think, that Israelis have with their country.
Yeah.
That everything will be done to get them out. And this is what I would dearly, dearly like to see happen.
Let's talk about what's going on in Europe. You've listened, you sat here on our previous panel. European Jews are experiencing incidents of anti-Semitism that they have never experienced before is Europe is still a place where Jews can live safely on 2024.
I want to say yes. And I think if you ask Jews in Germany, many of them will tell you that, I mean, that's why they're still there, that at the end of the day, they still think it is possible to live there. Fortunately, we've seen a resurgence of Jewish life in Germany over the past 2 decades. We see flourishing Jewish communities. We see Jewish schools, Jewish synagogues, and everything. And we're extremely glad that Jewish life has come back to Germany in that way, because we cannot take it for granted, obviously. Now, since October 7th, we also see another resurgence, and that is the resurgence of vile anti-Semitism. And I know from Jewish friends what that means to them in their daily life. And it pains me really to say that, yes, if I had a Jewish friend right now and he was in some specific part of Berlin, I would not advise him to speak Hebrew in the street, which is a horrible thing to say. I would not advise him to wear a kippah on certain parts of the Berlin underground, which is a horrible thing to say. This is not an acceptable state of affairs. It cannot be. We must, with all our might, fight against this. How do you fight this? You fight it with laws, of course, and the police and the state and everything. But that's not everything. You need the laws, and you need to be tough, and you need to implement the laws where needed. But that's not everything. I think the main role in fighting anti-Semitism it falls on each and every one of us. It's every citizen who has to make clear in his words and in his actions, and maybe sometimes even with a bit of, civil courage, that this is not the Germany we want to live in. We want to live in a Germany where you can wear a kippah, speak Hebrew in the street, and not be attacked. Much as I want to live in a Germany where a Muslim woman can wear a veil and not be attacked. We must be a country where respect rules and the Constitution, and not prejudice and anti-Semitism. So I think there's a huge role in education. There's a huge role for every single citizen to stand up and say, I will not have this. I will not stand for this. You cannot speak like this in my presence, or you cannot attack someone. This is, I think, even more important than the laws and everything.
I guess you heard the voices from Berliner Festival this week, I think, last week.
The Berlin Film Festival.
Yeah.
Yes, this last weekend.
Last week. We heard very strong anti-Israel calls, including calls to stop the supply of weapons to Israel. Is Germany considering or will consider joining such an arms embargo?
Well, first of all, I do not agree with the call to stop selling weapons to Israel or giving weapons to Israel. I think it is something that people should be allowed to say. I think it is within free speech to say this sort of thing. I don't agree with it, but you can criticize the government of Israel, you can criticize the conduct of the war. This is something that we will have to live with in a free society, much as you can be an activist for more arms or a tougher war. Okay. In 2008, then Chancellor Angela Merkel gave a speech at the Knesset saying the security of the State of Israel is part of the raison d'etat of Germany. And that is a sentence that still holds and it is still valid. And if you believe that, if you act along those lines, then that means that yes, Germany can contribute to the safety of the State of Israel by contributing militarily, by giving weapons, arms or other military support to the State of Israel. We have done that for many years, and we do it according to very strict export rules, where international law, human rights play a role. We look at it individually in the context of the situation, but I completely defend the fact that Germany has for a long time been a purveyor of military equipment to this country.
Thank you very much. So you're not, just the last question, you are not going, as far as you know, you're not going to join Britain or France, even in calling or saying that you're considering this, stopping the military aid.
We will continue what we always did. Look at every individual arms export individually, looking at the specific situation, looking at human rights issues, international law issues, and make our decision. In the past and over many decades, we came to the conclusion that we will support the State of Israel, and that's what we will continue to do.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you very much.